The beauty about a show like this is that anybody is welcome. Well, except for maybe any dad found in the middle of Oxford, Mississippi. Welcome on into the Overtime Drive. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. We have a jam-packed show for you this Thursday night, February 27th, the last show that we will ever do in the month of February, at least in the year of 2025. Real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we do this show twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Make sure that also you download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, link in the description. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, Dave at Dave Shumate SEC, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is fueled by FANDUEL. Go visit FANDUEL.com/SECU to join in the madness today and get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. It's really simple. Lay down $5, win that bet. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets. Sign up today at FANDUEL.com/SECU. Dave Shumate, how the hell are you, buddy?
Hey, Bear, I'm jacked to be on here with you tonight, brother. Another episode. Looking forward to it today. I was doing the 8 to 5 quick U job today. I was thinking about our shows. That's when you know you're fired up about something. Fired up is your idea to do the Thursday mailbag. So I'm fired up with it. We got a lot. We actually got a lot. I'll be lying to you. A little more than I even thought from the fans we get. I thought, Bear, you never know. First episode or two, you may have to come up with your own, but we didn't have to do that. We just added a question in late from a fan.
College football never sleeps, and the purest fans that actually enjoy this sport more than life itself want to hear opinions. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, for those of you that didn't miss the opening show on Monday night, here's the deal. On Mondays after the show, which is why it's important to be following us on the socials, we're not asking you to go ahead and guess to Twitter famous or to Instagram famous. We're literally asking you to follow us so that way you get to see the prompt. Dave Shumate, myself, and SEC Unfiltered put out a prompt that says mailbag questions. You throw your questions in there, and then on Thursday, we do a mailbag show. So that is what the Thursday shows are in the college football offseason. Every single week, we will do a mailbag. We're going to answer anywhere between 10 to 14, 15 questions. This is your show. This is the way we make it your show, is for you to be locked on in and have your questions answered and maybe pay attention to us. By the way, if you're watching live right now and you didn't get to join in the mailbag, ask your questions in the chat. We will throw them into the mix. And if you get a super chat that throws on in $5, $1, 50 cents for all I care, you will cut the line and you will go ahead and move all the way up into the pecking order. Dave Shumate and I will answer it right on the fly. But Dave, as we always like to do here on the show, SEC storylines for Thursday, February 27th. What you got on the docket?
Bear, let's go leading off a little around the SEC today, Bear. We are going to start in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Kalen DeBoer gave the folks a little something to, I guess, get a little upset about it. I'll read you the quote exactly. It's in regards to the $20.5 million revenue sharing, quote unquote, revenue sharing. People are coming down. Roughly 15 of that million, that 20 million, 20.5 million are going to go to football. Most schools are going to allocate towards it. And I believe Kalen DeBoer told On3's Pete Nakos today, quote, "The regulation is really important to the game itself. That regulation where we're all on an even playing field from the revenue sharing standpoint helps us just because now it comes down to what is important in recruiting, and that's relationships and sharing your vision." He continues, last paragraph here, "People that want to be aligned with your vision then come to a place like Alabama that has the resources, the tradition, the regulation, and having a more balanced playing field helps our situation. It allows us to get where it is at one point just a few years back, where recruiting is real recruiting, not just someone who's going to put in the highest bid." A lot of people I saw, Bear, did not really take too kindly as well. I don't know. I think what he was saying, maybe, I don't know, looking at it from 35,000 foot, when he said we, you tell me if I'm wrong here, Bear, I kind of took it as we as in college football. I mean, he did say Alabama, but I don't think he's sitting there being like, we were at an unfair advantage. I don't know. That's not Kalen DeBoer's personality. I think people kind of took it and ran with it.
Here's my problem. It starts off with, number one, Greg Burns' comments throughout the entire college football playoff run. That already lit a fire.
I could gaslight it. Yeah.
That already put a fuel and kind of had the match in his hand. Kalen DeBoer saying we in Alabama in the same phrase or in the same paragraph, that allowed him to drop the match and then go ahead and start wildfire everywhere. So maybe you're right, but this is Alabama we're talking about. For years underneath Nick Saban, and we're going to talk about Nick Saban in a little bit, I always hated it when people were like, we got Chase to be Nick Saban. Nick Saban was doing his own thing. Like, you were once viewed as a program that was always the clear-cut top of the pecking order. Like, people were trying to get to your level. Assistants were being hired by major institutions because they want to get a taste of what the Sabanade was. They want to create their own Saban-esque type of recruiting grounds and hotbeds and land some premier players because they thought that if they took the prospect, they would go ahead and be able to win that out. And now we're coming out just 2 years after Saban's gone and saying it levels the playing field. Like, it's just his bad taste. Whether or not it was meant for Alabama, we in general college football, it's the sentiment surrounding all of it that just comes off as very porous and also very much unlikable by a program that was complaining about losing to 2 unranked teams and still being left out of the college football playoff.
Yeah, a little low-hanging fruit thing to take advantage of. Again, a slow time in the sport. People are going to analyze everything. You're right. I think you're right. Greg Burns' comment is very similar to easy. Again, low-hanging fruit. Next, the New Orleans Saints. They won't draft any LSU players, but they are stealing coaches. Bo Davis, after only 1 year on the Bayou in Baton Rouge on Brian Kelly's staff, is now leaving to go join Kellen Moore and the new New Orleans Saints staff. So LSU fans probably not going to be too happy about that. Brian Kelly, once again, having to go out and hire another defensive line coach. It's kind of been a revolving door, that position, even going back to Jamar Cain for them, who left to go to the Denver Broncos. I'm assuming Austin Thomas, and probably Pete Jenkins, I would say, a longtime defensive line coach around college football, specifically at LSU, will have a big say in probably who it recommended to be in the job. They need some continuity in this position. They got Bo Davis from Texas, massive hire. Thought he did a pretty good job. Again, the personnel in that front was not great last year. Thought he got the most out of it. Now you got to go back right before spring ball and kind of reevaluate who you can go get. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people you can go. That is a loss, but again, it's not like he's going to another college team. So it is what it is. You got to wake up tomorrow, the sun will rise. You got to just get your ducks in order. But it is a loss for LSU.
How do you feel about that if you're in LSU, if you're in the state of Louisiana? Like, because you're a Saints fan on one hand and then you're a Tigers fan on the other hand. Is it like if
I'm a fan of both teams here, I'd much rather him be coaching my college team.
I would much rather him be coaching in college because if he's not only one of the most respected defensive line coaches in college football, he's just one of the most respected defensive line coaches, period, in the sport. And Kellen Moore's building himself a staff that I think is gaining a lot of respect around league circles. But for me personally, LSU is one of those teams to where it feels like everything is kind of coming together. You look at what a guy like Brian Kelly has done over the last few years to kind of fertilize what is supposed to be Bayou culture down there. And then, Kellen Moore comes on in. Well, you're going to New Orleans. Start back at square one, buddy. Like, this is such a critical year for LSU. And to take, for my money, one of the best coaches in the SEC, not coordinators, not head coaches, coaches in general, and send them off to the Sunday game, it's disheartening. Like, if I was an LSU and a New Orleans Saints fan, I'd be really pissed off this morning, despite knowing he's not leaving my state.
No, I agree with you, Barry. You'd much rather him be coaching your college team than your NFL team. Next, going around the SEC, we have some NFL Combine stuff. I hadn't had a chance to watch a ton of it, but I think the defensive line linebacker going Bear. You kind of hand off this one. I saw James Pierce, 4.47.
Yeah, we're going to 4.5. Dude's going to be a stud next week. Shamar Stewart was talked about as a dude that's going to rise up draft boards because of how fast his 40 was and what his numbers were on the broad jump and on the vertical. Landon Jackson had a good day for Arkansas, so he may not have eyebrows, but he's got the eyes on him down in Indianapolis, which is, I think, a good thing. Jalen Walker is going to be the first linebacker selected, so it'll be interesting to see how many SEC guys go from this front seven early on in the draft process. I'm betting right now if the over-under at FanDuel was set, say, at 4.5, I'd probably take the over.
Continuing on from that perspective, going to the hardwood again, Auburn, magic number 2. They need either a combination of 2 wins themselves with 3 games left or a combination of them winning. For example, they win at Rupp this weekend. Alabama loses in Knoxville. They would clinch the SEC. Just so a magic number of 2. You start hearing these numbers talked about, the lucky number, or the magic number, I should say, when you get kind of in baseball postseason. I think you hear this. Let's look at initially before we move on, Bear, to the mailbag. Let's go to there we go, right there. The SEC basketball tournament, if it ended today. Again, we're so used to Sad Wednesday, just being 2 teams. Now we got 4. You have the 16 South Carolina seed. It says 16 seed South Carolina, 9 seed Mississippi State, 13 seed Texas, 12 seed Georgia. That would be an elimination game for sure. And we see that game on Saturday, by the way, anyways. 15 seed LSU, 10 seed Vanderbilt, and 14 seed Oklahoma, 11 seed Arkansas. First buys, you'd have Kentucky as the 8 seed, Missouri is the 5, Ole Miss is the 7, Texas A&M is the 6, and then the double buys. Auburn is the 1 seed, Alabama is the 2 seed, Florida is the 3 seed, and Tennessee is the 4 seed. I mean, I think we're about to get there. I think right now we got 10 SEC teams that are locks, and we still got 4 teams fighting for probably about 2 more spots. I think you got Georgia, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. I think Texas, I think Oklahoma are both going to be left out. Feel pretty solid about Georgia and Arkansas getting in. So that's how we stand right now in the SEC on the hardwood in the basketball.
What about Vanderbilt making a run? Where would they have to land for them to guarantee 8?
Sorry, Barry, you cut out for a minute.
Where would Vanderbilt have to land in the SEC tournament to guarantee a spot in the round of 68?
I mean, I think they're there. They're at 7 wins now.
So they're there. Okay.
They're there. I mean, one more 8, you're getting 8 and 10, you're getting in. 7 and 11, where it gets a little interesting. They've even talked about some 6-win teams in labor. I think Vanderbilt's going to get into the tournament. That's why I think I was at 9 for a while. Now we got 10, accounting Vanderbilt, and it's going to be down to those last 4. I mean, like Joe Lunardi right now has like 13, 14 teams in, but he keeps forgetting. He doesn't forget. I shouldn't say that. He's just calculating it as of this moment, and it's, hey, Texas and Georgia play this weekend. Loser's probably out, and Oklahoma's going to have to win out to get to 7 wins. I don't think
Oklahoma's gonna have to win out, and then are they gonna have to go on a run in Nashville?
I mean, if they won out, they have some quality wins down the stretch. So I mean, they play at Ole Miss this weekend. If they won out, 3 games left, that would get them to 7 conference wins. I think it's 7 because Oklahoma went undefeated in non-con, so like they have some good quality wins. If they won out, they would be in, I think, before even going to Nashville. But I don't think they do. I think them and Texas will work themselves out of it. And I think Georgia feels pretty good after that win against Florida. And I think Arkansas is going to have some opportunities.
Humor me, because if I'm not paying enough attention to the hardwood, if you were a betting man looking at this current bracket, who is the wild card going on a run this year? Like, what was it, 2 years ago, Texas A&M won the championship? Or was it 3 years ago, A&M won the championship, and they probably should have gotten in, but they got left out because if they didn't get it and they went to the NIT? Who's that team?
I mean, what's wild this year, Bears, I think you could really make a case for about 9 teams winning this, because you got to think. I mean, we saw it last year. Auburn went on a run, won this tournament, went out in the first round. I mean, it's easy to say it's because they were tired. Maybe that had something to do with it. But then you also had a team like Alabama who looked terrible on Friday night in this tournament last year, then went on and went to the Final Four. So it's kind of like, do you get rested up? I think teams potentially like Auburn, who I think has a 1 seed locked up, and maybe a team like Alabama and Florida who may have 1 seeds locked up before they go to Nashville. Maybe you get some guys on some minute restrictions. I mean, they're going to say in a PR press conference, Bruce and Nate, that, hey, if we're playing for a championship, we want to go do it. But I think it'll be interesting from that perspective. But to answer your question, Bear, a team that could get a little hot, if Arkansas was a little healthier, I would probably say them, but they're getting down to like 6, 7 guys. I would say a team that's really not that sneaky. I think they're for sure going to be an NCAA tournament team, but I think their roster is built for tournament style of play. That's Missouri. It's Dennis Gates' team. They go like 9, 10 deep. So you playing 3 to 4 days in a row, it doesn't affect them as much as an Arkansas team. It's running off 6, 7 scholarship guys right now. So Missouri would be my answer to your question.
Second round, is that a kind of interview for the Indiana opening between Ole Miss and Vanderbilt with Mark Byington and Chris Beard?
That's an interesting question there. I don't know, Jake. It's wild to say. I was listening to a show today, and someone made a good point. There's only been one coach that's really ever won big at Indiana, and that's obviously Bobby Knight. Like Mike
Davis, trying to get back to that level. That's the problem.
I don't know, but do you stay at Ole Miss? Like if you're Chris Beard and kind of look at it as a Bruce Pearl type thing, like maybe I can become like the king here if I build this thing up. I'm not saying it's similar. Ole Miss and Auburn were not great jobs before both those guys got there, but something similar. I don't know, because I think, as you know, Bear, we talked about it. You don't need obviously as much money in NIL to go win in basketball, because you go get 1 or 2 really good players. That's a major difference in basketball compared to you get 1 or 2 really good players in football. You still could lose a bunch of football games. So I think you can win at a lot of places in basketball now. Maybe he's a little comfortable there. I don't know. You're right though. It'll be interesting though. It's a good point. Mark Byington may be interesting. I think I would leave Vanderbilt for Indiana.
I would leave Vanderbilt for Indiana if I got that phone
call. Ole Miss is so committed, like money-wise, to winning big now in athletics. I don't know about that. That's wild to say, but it's a good question.
Here's the thing, though. If Indiana is all in now with Kirk Cignetti doing it on the football field, why would they not be all in on landing their long-term coach in basketball? And Byington would be in that kind of same category, James Madison, not really a well-known commodity, went on a couple of
I think
runs.
Byington would be a phenomenal hire.
I think it'd be really good. I think that's kind of an interview job for the job out in Bloomington. But all right, that does it for us here when it comes to the SEC storylines. Let's go ahead and do the mailbag. So as this works, comment in the comment section if you want to go ahead and join in and have your question answered. If not, we got 14 questions. We're going to drive on through them. First up from Alex C. With the new expanded college football playoff going to 16 potential teams in 2026, what are your thoughts on the Big Ten and the SEC? So basically, I think what he's asking is, what do we think about how many teams get the automatic qualifier? How many teams should get in? Should there be automatic qualifiers with Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey having kind of full control?
I mean, you get it from a business standpoint because these are the two. I mean, these are the big kids on the block, the SEC and the Big Ten. So you get it from like, hey, we're the big money drivers. We should get a little more. I mean, you get it in a capitalism society from that standpoint. But I do see on the other hand, and I hate playing the fence, that like if we're really trying to get a legitimate playoff, should we like already like cookie cutter out how many spots certain leagues and stuff get, even though that may not be right in a certain year? Like, why don't we just get the 12 best teams? So I see it from that perspective, but I think inevitably we're going to go because the Big Ten and the SEC have the leverage. And as me and you've talked about stuff before, Bear, I mean, leverage is key in all aspects of life, in all industries. Like the Big Ten, the SEC, Tony Petitti, Greg Sankey have leverage right now. I think they're going to get their way. I think at some point we're going to see them ultimately break away into some 70-something-2 conference, and we're going to see a couple of these ACC, these Big 12 teams join in, the haves and have-nots. We're going to go separated. Again, again, this isn't part of the question. If you're a group of 5 team outside of the revenue stuff, which is obviously important, and that's where you have to figure it out. I don't know why you wouldn't be for it, because don't you want to go play for like a real championship each year? At least, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of like you played sports, like the competitive side of it. But from the business side of things, I understand they have to make money too. But I think from the real question, back to the original question they got, I mean, I think at some point, yeah, they're going to get a certain amount of teams in that they want. But inevitably, it's going to go be the Big Ten SEC show at some point down the line. So I'm not going to be too upset either way about it because I feel like I'm fully anticipating it happening.
We had heard for a while that there was conversations of, well, we have the most money, which means we have the biggest ball. We're just going to take the ball and go join our own little court, and we're going to play to ourselves. And that's what we're going to do without you guys in the college football playoff. And you can call it whatever you want, but when the television markets look at us, they're going to say, no, we want to go join forces with these two because they bring in the most profit. So this is delaying Super Conference. What they're going to have is a rule that says we will have 4 teams guaranteed in the playoff. Now, what's going to be really interesting is that do Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey do this own little personal side hustle away from everyone else in college football? Because we heard a guy like Chris Del Conte talk about today, Texas scheduling more premier games because of they believe as a program are one of the premier programs in the sport. Therefore, they should have these type of games on full display in non-conference matchups. Does that start to become a thing where, much like in college basketball, Big 10 versus ACC or the SEC versus Big 12 challenge, does the winner with the most victories in terms of 16 versus 18 teams, does the most wins that year get that 5th team to go to the college football playoff every season? Is that like an added bonus in when you get to 16? But for my money, what I appreciate is if this delays more when it comes to the Super League, I'm all for it. Because whether or not people want to say that we're an SEC show, I'm a college football fan. I'm a pure college football fan. You will not catch me slipping at 2:30 in the morning when Utah State is playing San Jose State on CBS Sports Network. I will be locked into that game like I am at 11:30 when Ole Miss kicks off against South Carolina. That's how much I care about this sport. And so for that to still have value, we need to keep it as the way it is in the current college football playoff format, even if we are expanding. But if this is what delays the future of a Super League to where teams like Utah State, Texas State, James Madison, Marshall no longer have that same prominence, I'm for it. I'm for giving the SEC and giving the Big Ten automatic qualifiers and automatic bids, not because of I like the idea that a 10-2 team should automatically be able to punch their ticket to the playoff, but what it's doing is it's allowing me to still enjoy the chaos that comes in the Big 12. And the chaos that comes in the ACC and the battle down to the finish line in the Sun Belt and the Mountain West or the AAC for who is going to be that group of 5 squad. Like, that's what I care about. So if it delays it, so be it. I'm fine with that.
No, I agree with you.
Question number 2 from Coleman R. What are realistic expectations for Kalen DeBoer in year 2 at Alabama? I'll go short, sweet, and to the point. 10 wins, no losses to an unranked team, 1 win against a ranked opponent, fighting for a spot in Atlanta, fighting for a spot in the college football playoff. Those should be realistic expectations, I think, for Alabama, for Kalen DeBoer in year 2.
Yeah, I think it's making the playoffs, whether that's 9-3, 10-2, whatever gets them in. I think at that point, I think it's pretty easy. You got to make the college football playoffs. Again, I don't think he loses his job if they don't. I just think that really turns up the heat heading into 26 at that point. Expectations got to make the playoffs, I think, next year.
Should it, though? Should it turn up the heat at a place like Alabama? Kalen DeBoer going into him feels like
it probably depends what it looks like, what the quarterback situation looks like. If it's like, hey, you barely rode Ty Simpson to the finish line, or like, hey, man, Keelan Russell came on strong at the end of the season. We like what we kind of got with our young guy, and you finish like 9-3 and miss it. That'll taste a little better. Won't be great, still won't be good, but I don't feel like I think that's where the temperature will be up no matter what. How hot will depend on what it kind of finishes. What does it look like at that quarterback situation? Because if you're going in to 26 still looking for a quarterback, which I don't think you will be, but if it was and you were 9-3 and missed the playoffs, that's when people are going to kind of be like, hold up now. We still don't even have a foundation going into year 3.
I think the arrival of Ryan Grubb is going to relax Kalen DeBoer a lot, and I think it's going to ease the tensions of the frustrated Alabama fans. Because keep in mind, they are 2 or 3 plays away from still finishing with 10 wins last year. 10 wins year 1, replacing the greatest coach to ever walk the face of the college football earth, is a big win in my book. I didn't think Alabama had to make the playoffs last year for them to be considered a winning season for a brand new coach. Now, when you look at the returning talent, when you look at what they've paid to bring back players, what they believe is the good foundation, how they've landed yet another top 3 recruiting class, and nobody is transitioning the way that you want to see them to, then that's where I have my concerns. Am I watching more players in a mass exodus of names that Kalen DeBoer recruited enter the transfer portal? Am I watching regression on a defense that at one point last year felt like it was the backbone of the team and still has a lot of veterans returning in the secondary, a lot of veterans returning in the front 7? How do I feel about the offensive line? Have I changed enough of my offensive identity from what Jalen Milroe ran versus what these other quarterbacks do? Those are the things that I'm looking for Kalen DeBoer. But from a overall standpoint of expectations, winning against Tennessee at home should be an expectation. Winning at home, winning at home against a Wisconsin should be an expectation. Not losing to Missouri or Vanderbilt or Oklahoma or whoever you welcome in should be an expectation. Finishing with 10 wins and being in line as the 4 or 5 seed even in the SEC to make it to Atlanta, with what you have returning offensively and what you have as a good foundation defensively, that should not be off the table.
You can make. I think Alabama's probably maybe got the best defense returning in the league on paper. Now,
On paper,
that be? I mean, everybody else is going to be pretty young. Texas is going to be young on defense. Georgia's going to be young on defense. Bama's got some key core guys back. Do they have holes? Yeah, they have some things they got to shore up. But, I mean, second year in their quote-unquote swarm defense under Kane Womack, who, again, everybody was ready to kind of fire him after the Vanderbilt game. And, again, that wasn't a good performance. 2 things can be true at once. But as the season went on, they did start to look a little better. They weren't losing games late because of the defense. So I think there's some things to be fired up about. It's just you don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like.
Ander writes in, why do you think Texas has been built to win since the second they arrived in the SEC, while Texas A&M has been in the conference for over a decade and hasn't finished with a 10-plus win season since 2012? Is A&M set to fall off the face of the earth and become another run-of-the-mill team? I'll answer this one. I think it starts off with the coach. That's my personal standpoint, is that when Steve Sarkisian came in, they already knew what the culture was going to be. They already knew what the standard was going to be. And Sark was able to kind of fix the little lulls that was wrong with his career, learn how to become a better coach, become a better mentor, become a better teacher, become a better, I think, work partner out when he was in out when he was in Tuscaloosa, to know what expectations were in Austin. And then once they established that type of persona of, I have to listen to players. I have to listen to my locker room. I have to listen to other voices around to make decisions that are best for the organization, not best for what I think is for the organization, what we think is best. They established a culture. They were able to build a good foundation, and then the right type of players wanted to come to Texas. And they were developing the right amount of talent. They were building a good overall baseline for the offensive and defensive line. And then they were having the right recruits that came on in to when they joined the SEC, everyone knew Texas was a force. They had stellar offensive line play for the first time in over a decade. They had great defensive line play over back-to-back years. They revamped their secondary and brought in really good players in the portal and in the recruiting cycles that in years past weren't properly developed. And so Texas did all the minor things behind closed doors that I think A&M hasn't done just yet. I think A&M finally got the right guy with Mike Elko, but now this is step one. Remember, it took 3 years for Steve Sarkisian to take Texas to the college football playoff. It's year one. Elko's just getting started out in College Station. So I don't think A&M is going to be another run-of-the-mill program. I'm not betting on them to be a 10-win team in 2025. I'm not betting on them to be that much better record-wise, but I think that they finally have the right head coach. So that's just step one. That's the difference between Texas A&M and Texas. They have the right head coach, and they were able to build the identity.
Yeah, Barry, you kind of answered all of it. Yeah, that's all. Adding on to that, that's it. Yeah, I mean, it's just timing, really. I think if this
I did not mean to steal that question.
If this was the first year in 2023, I mean, Sark struggled in his first year, lost to Kansas. I think it's just more of a timing type of thing for that perspective, but not to be long-winded on that. I mean, no, I agree. It starts with the head coach. I don't really think it's like if Nick Saban was A&M, he'd be losing at A&M either. I'm assuming the person who asked this question, the way it was phrased, probably owns a lot of burnt orange.
Either that or they're really, really frustrated at what Texas A&M has done over the last few years. Question number 4, Martin E. Take out the big 4 teams, Texas, Georgia, Bama, LSU. In this time over the next 3 years, which program will be the biggest riser and which will be the laughing stock of the conference?
I say laughing stock of the conference. I mean, I hate to term anybody that, but specifically football, I mean, I think they're already kind of there. I don't think it's anybody dropping. I'm going to go Mississippi State just from a collective standpoint. I think Mississippi State's in a tough spot from an athletics department standpoint compared to the rest of them. Because, again, most teams are going to commit $15 million to college football. I think Mississippi State may be a little less than that. Mississippi State may be operating at 12 to 14 compared to what some other teams will be like operating from a football standpoint. And they don't get the pick of the litter anyway. So I'd probably say Mississippi State football, a lot of things are out of their control. I would say them, Mississippi State, biggest riser. I'm going to say, again, you took those teams out. I'm going to say Auburn because I think Auburn's going to get real desperate from a perspective of like they're going to spend money until they can catch up and kind of get into that category, at least financially. They're going to start spending big, especially until this ruling comes down the revenue sharing because everybody's starting to empty that piggy bank now because, hey, let's throw this last-minute load in right now before all the revenue sharing comes in. So I think Auburn, they're dumping money. We saw it this past year in the transfer portal. Just can Hugh Freeze capitalize on that? So that's what I say. I would say Auburn compared to the teams that you maybe leave off the list there.
So I'll go 2 different ones. They surprisingly both were actually different to begin with. Riser for me, Dave, Tennessee every single offseason brings in a quarterback that I think could start anywhere in the SEC. And I think that solves a big problem for when it comes to the long-term stableness of your roster. You got to have a good quarterback. I feel really good about that quarterback room for the next several seasons as long as Josh Heupel's there because the type of player that he's targeting. I think Tennessee's doing a good job of building the collective. I think they've started opening up new avenues on how to be able to sell Knoxville completely different than other locations. I like the fact that they are buying into what they saw last year defensively with the extension on Tim Banks. My only question is that can we see a more revamped version of this offense that lit the world on fire 2 years ago underneath Heupel? But besides that, they have the revenue. They have the NIL funds. I think that they're willing to put money into fixing Neyland and putting it on a premier location. They're building like that outdoor vicinity right next to the river. So
yeah,
that's
they have all these baseball stadiums.
They're putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to football, and they're investing in Josh Heupel, and Heupel's investing in them. He's locked in. I think that he wants to be in Knoxville, and I think that his offensive identity needs to be tweaked a little bit. But overall, I like what they have in terms of a foundation. This is the closest thing we have seen since Philip Fulmer was running the show out in Knoxville for a premier program like Rocky Top to be back on top. And I go Kentucky for football because at this point, it just feels like Kentucky is one of those programs that had its little run. It felt really confident. It felt like it was a program that was good enough to get to 6-7 wins every other year. I mean, every year. And then every 3 years, they'd get that like 9-10 win season. I feel like that when Mark Stoops got offered the job at Texas A&M, and ultimately whatever went wrong, whether it went south because of behind closed doors on Texags or because of he wanted back out, he lost the locker room. And then when you look at Kentucky and where it stands financially when it comes to the athletic department and how Arkansas and Mississippi State and other programs, they aren't investing entirely in football. Why would you do that at a place that never really cared about football to begin with? They were content with it just being another part of the sport. Like if they had a couple of good players that went on out to the NFL draft, that was awesome. But to me, when I look at Kentucky, if Mark Stoops goes, is that the least enticing job currently in the SEC? With what you know that you have in terms of revenue, with what you know you have in terms of the transfer portal, where you rank or where you ranked before Mark Stoops got there every single year in recruiting, I feel like that when you have an offensive, innovative mind like a Jeff Lebby, even if he uses a place like Ole Miss Mississippi State as a stepping stone job, they're going to at least get to some point to where people want a Jeff Lebby to become their next head coach. I don't know if we're going to see that again at a place like Kentucky. I think Kentucky was a really fun team for the last decade where they were unpredictable. And now we're going to see them kind of go back to that level of 4-8, 3-9, 2-10 every single year.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Like John Summerall won't take that job. No,
why would he at this point? Like, no, honestly, why would he?
Yeah, no, I don't think he's going to take that job. Depending how many SEC job openings come open this next year, which, obviously there were none this year. And I think ADs and athletic directors, again, are sitting there kind of, do we fire as many people next year? Because, again, we need funds to pay people, pay our athletes. So from that perspective, yeah, you're right, Bear. The new landscape of college athletics does not suit Kentucky football, Mississippi State football. I'll say to your answer for Tennessee, the question didn't add. I'd almost put Tennessee almost like, again, they're not like the elite of the elite right now, but I always kind of consider them in that group, right? They've won enough. They made a college football playoff. I'm already kind of considering them in that, but he didn't, so I get why you picked him.
That's what I thought. That was a low-hanging fruit because if they've already been to the playoff and they feel really good about what direction they've gone in with NIL over the last.
Tennessee's at that point now where it's like proof of concept. You can go win games. Let's go see if he can take it to that next level.
He's the first coach since Philip Fulmer to have 2 10-win seasons, and he's only going into his 5th year. And remember, this was a guy that at one point people didn't know if they believed him because he came from UCF. And he was a very late hire in the process because of the Jeremy Pruitt situation.
Yeah, and the AD came from UCF, so it looked like it was kind of just a low-hanging hire. You brought your coach, AD, great job, Danny White.
Question from Johnny Van Walden. And by the way, guys, these questions that we do, they can be about anything. They don't have to be about college football. They don't have to be about the SEC. They can literally be about anything. Like Johnny's here. Does your diet include chili with beans? Okay. And I hate this question.
It's a bear question, dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the running joke. For those of you that are just tuning in, I am from Texas. And in Texas, we do not put beans in our chili. We never have. I have grown up with no beans in my chili.
Texas
and one
is
time,
a soft state.
One time we were talking about it during SEC Media Days, and it became a running bit, and now everybody comments on it about my disdain for beans. Number one, I wouldn't put beans in my chili even if there were beans in chili.
Bear, do you like beans in general?
I hate beans. Like, that's my thing.
So you're not like you don't get beans on a burrito or anything like that?
No, not at all. Honestly, when I go out to a Mexican restaurant, I have to split my rice and my beans, and I don't touch the rice that's already touched the beans because I think it looks like poop. Like, that is how much I hate beans. I am so disgusted by them. That's
an interesting mental block you got there, Bear.
It is the one food that I am nowhere near interested in touching, looking at, and being around.
I've heard people hating. I don't like olives, but I've never heard people just straight up disliking beans like you. That's interesting, but to each their own there, Bear.
So let's just get this out of the way. If beans do belong in chili in your world, besides Skyline chili, which is just basically dog food that you're serving on up to people out in Cincinnati.
Never had Skyline. I hear it's rich.
Don't. It just okay. If you are doing that, that's fine. If beans did belong in chili, which they don't, but that's a whole different thing because of Texas culture is completely different from the rest of the southeastern region, and I will die on that.
It's softer. You're right.
How dare you? You evil son of a bitch. I would still not put beans in my chili. And here's how bad it would be. Dave will make a pot of chili. I will eat it. When I hand him back my pot, he will see the beans that are sitting at the very bottom. I will not touch them.
I'll eat around.
I will pick around it. I will pick around it.
No, Bear, in all seriousness, you'll like this. And also, this is a funny statement Jimbo Fisher used to say in Staffy. So this was his first year when he came over from Florida State. So he always said, he's like, this will be funny. See what the Texas people in here think. Not like the Longhorn fans, state of Texas people. So he used to be like, Texas kids are softer than Florida kids. He's like, I can coach Florida kids harder. He's like, I think Texas kids grow up with a silver spoon in these nice high school facilities, and they're a little softer. He used to say that in staff meetings all the time. He's like, I used to just rip like the kids down in Florida is just ass all the time. He's like, dude, I mean, they're that group of kids that like they're walking through the school park. They see a football laying in the park. They'll go run and start their own games. I don't know if the Texas kids are like that.
I'm sure they're all very thankful that he no longer belongs in San I think they're all very enjoyable with that. Real quickly, if you are enjoying this, remember we are doing a Mailbag Thursday every single week. All you got to do is on Monday, go ahead, follow us on the socials at SEC Unfiltered, at Dave Shumate SEC, at Mr. Cole Thompson. We will give you a prompt. Give us your questions. We will answer them in the mailbag. And real quickly, this episode of The Overtime Drive is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because FanDuel is #1 in NBA live betting. Even if you miss the first few minutes of a game or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from the first whistle until the final buzzer. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same-game parlays for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. And if you haven't joined already, well, new FanDuel customers get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So lay down $5, win that bet. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets to play. March Madness is right around the corner. The NBA postseason is on the horizon. So what's not to love? Join and visit at FanDuel.com/SECU to join today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment count with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Disclaimer: must be 21 and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, and 18 plus in DC. First online real wager money only. $5 deposit is required. Bonus issue with non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, so question number 6 from Boomer Brett. This is a fun one. Cole, I watched your live stream on Oklahoma's expectations earlier this week, but has your opinion changed now with the hiring of Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl? All right, so how do you feel?
So talking to some personnel guys in college football, again, Jim, great dude, former area scout for the Seattle Seahawks, was with the Patriots for a little bit. So I used to be the NFL liaison. I would deal with him from a Senior Bowl perspective, and even when he came in with the Seahawks when I was at that same role at A&M. Great dude, phenomenal guy, phenomenal evaluator. I'd heard he was trying to get out because I thought the Senior Bowl, I think, is kind of going away. But this specific hire, not shocking. I mean, you're seeing Nebraska hire somebody coming over from them. But a lot of these teams, athletic departments are hiring these guys coming from the NFL because they're the only ones that have ever closely even touched some kind of salary cap. And I don't even know if Jim, he can maybe correct me, if he's ever been around a salary cap. He was an area scout. And I think sometimes with these NFL guys could be a little bit of a rude awakening, and it's nobody's fault. It's just the college game is a ton different than the NFL game. You're still having to deal with like agents. There's not as much incentives and contracts. I mean, you can't do that legally. So it's just totally different. You still got to recruit them. There's a gettability standpoint at a school like Arkansas. So, I mean, it's not the NFL where anyone can go get anyone. We're all on a level playing field with a true salary cap. There's still not a true salary cap. Everybody's going to be working off different numbers. You just can't go over 20 million. So I think it's a good hire. I'll say this, Bear. This is what I think Oklahoma's getting. He has a lot of connections, obviously, in the NFL and around these colleges from going to these schools, getting these Senior Bowl rosters going. He's going to know a lot about these kids in the portals. He can probably, from the portal, he can get a lot of sources, get real intel on, hey, do these kids love football? Is he a hard worker? Does he have that chip on his shoulder? He'll give them intel on that, and that's his background. So I think from that perspective, it's going to be good. But again, what is he going to be doing day to day? I don't know. I mean, if you asked a different head coach, if you asked every coach in college football what this GM role would be, they would all give you a totally different answer. So each school's different.
I will say that I have been enamored by every move this offseason Oklahoma has made. I have loved every single one, including the Jim Nagy one. And the Jim Nagy one may be my favorite so far. I love the Ben Arbuckle hire. I love the fact that you got John Mateer. I love that you brought Mateer's quarterbacks coach from Pullman. They got Kevin Wilson to be a senior offensive assistant after the work that he did during his tenure when he was out at Ohio State working with CJ Stroud. So they have put so much of an emphasis on fixing that offense. But the thing that I love about the Jim Nagy hire, you already brought this up, his connections around college football, building the all-star rosters down in Mobile, Alabama for the last 6-7 years, I think provides so much value because of number one, he knows what he has to look for in a type of player that's entering the transfer portal because if he knows what type of player comes out of every single school. And number two, he knows what type of players are being properly taught at certain schools to where when they come up with a number in NIL, what they want in return, you can give them a fair compensation. That to me is the ultimate selling point. A guy like Jim Nagy having all of these ties, having all of these ears throughout the college campuses and knowing what type of players come out of these programs under these type of coaches, what type of attitude they have, what type of potential they can provide. That's going to allow you to properly budget certain NIL packages to land really, really, really good players. And I think elevate your roster that much more. I don't think it changes this year. Like, I think Oklahoma at best is probably an 8-win, maybe a 9-win team. And that's the offensive line hits. You have a healthy wide receiver room. John Mateer is awesome transitioning from Washington State to the SEC. Your defense still is really good. But what this does for me is it stabilizes as a counteractive move toward Texas of, hey, we know what we need to build our roster with. We know what type of players we need to go after. A guy with all these ears and boots on the ground and going and visiting college campuses and having a good understanding about what type of players come from certain schools and what can last in the SEC and what type of fit this mold, that's going to do wonders for us. I think it's a slam dunk hire. I personally don't want him to go to the NFL. I want him to stay in college. When the GM position started to become more and more prominent around the college landscape, I kept saying to myself, this feels like where Jim Nagy needs to land. And if it goes to the right school, and it's a school that knows and is willing to spend money and willing to work within the salary cap limits and be able to put themselves in a good position, this may be a reason why we talk about a program turning the corner and being viewed as a national championship contender. And I think that, again, the moves that we have seen from Brent Venables, you're only as strong as your weakest link. He's strengthened the offense. He's also strengthened the front office room by bringing in a guy like Jim Nagy. I absolutely love the hire.
Agree.
All right, what we got next? Mark D. You've just been told you've won $50 million, but to receive the cash, you must pick one quarterback from the SEC to lead your team to an undefeated season en route to a national championship. It doesn't have to be with the current roster they play for. It just has to be a quarterback in the SEC entering 2025. If they lose, you get nothing. Who are you picking and why? Okay, so long story short, who is our QB1 going into the SEC for 2025? You can put him on any roster.
Yeah, I mean,
that's basically it.
You could make a lot of cases for a lot of dudes here. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's kind of a preference. I'm gonna go with DJ Lagway right now, though. I think if you could give me an offseason with him, he would be the best quarterback in the league. I like what he brings to the table from an ability to play within the pocket. Looks a lot more comfortable than a lot of these young cats do coming in. Saw a lot of good things from a maturity standpoint, even in a loss in Knoxville that you like from it. That ball to tie it up on 4th and 10, 4th and 15 was a thing of beauty. So I'm going to go with DJ Lagway again. You got a lot of other guys. Bear, I'm sure you'll name somebody too. I mean, again, there's no wrong answer here. You can name a couple of guys around this league.
I'm going to go with the guy that I have as QB2 going into the year because I know what to expect from him, especially because I've seen him at every single vicinity at this point, and he's only going to get better. It's Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. For me, that's QB1 in the SEC.
I didn't think you were going to go with that one, Bear. But
to me, that's QB1 in the SEC. I love the fact that he's going to have another year underneath Joe Sloan to kind of better the offense and better his numbers. He threw for 4,000 yards last season. He had 31 total touchdowns. And then we want to talk about the interceptions. Dave, he threw the football 525 times last year. Can you tell me who was number 2 and number 3 in pass attempts in the SEC? Off the top of your head?
Tell me.
Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. and they had 85 fewer pass attempts than Garrett Nussmeier. They all had the same amount of interceptions with 12. So there was going to be more mistakes and more room for error when you don't have a run game. The way that Texas did at times, the way that Georgia did at times. They never had a run game out at LSU last season. So I can put him on any roster in college football and say he's going to win me a championship. I know that he's got the arm strength. I know he's got the accuracy. I know he can play with eyes in his face. He's also been in every single situation imaginable, playing from behind, having to get a fourth down conversion in front of the hometown crowd in a must-win game, playing in a ravenous atmosphere with 114,000 screaming fans. He gets it.
I just don't trust the turnovers. That's my only thing, Bear. Again, I'm not going to take a wrong answer. I don't think the floor is lower than some of these other guys.
The floor is lower, but also that's kind of my thing, is I'd rather play it a little bit safe. Because what if Lenore Sellers, he decides to run it on 4th and short, and he gets a 50-yard gain, and at the last second he fumbles? Like, I know what to get from Garrett Nussmeier. I think it's a what you see is what you get kind of quarterback at this point in his career, and I'm not really worried about it anymore. I kind of am just like, my brain looks at a guy like Nuss. And
he's very Phillip Rivers to me.
It's consistent, safe. Here's what I can expect. 4,000 passing yards, 35 to 38 touchdowns, probably 10 interceptions, completion percentage around 65%. If I put him in a roster with a better run game, I put him in a roster with decent wide receivers, he's going to elevate the receiver room. He's going to elevate the defenses to have to kind of prepare for both the run and the passing attack. And I think he is the most complete quarterback at this point. I'd rather play it safe than go for upside if I got $50 million on the line. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I would probably go away with the turnovers. That's right. He literally does remind me of Phillip Rivers. Like, win some games, but I don't know if you ever get to a championship game. What year was it? 02, 03? They should have.
06, they went 14-2, and they went to the divisional round.
Lost the Patriots in AFC championship game.
Jackson-esque. What are your 3 traits between you and Dave that makes an elite wide receiver? So, what are your 3 traits that you look for as a wide receiver? Because mine are probably different than yours. Or maybe they're the same.
When I think of receiver, I think it's all a little different. It's kind of a loaded question there because I always think of when you're building a roster, when you're looking at the wide receiver group, you kind of look at it like a basketball roster, like 1 through 5, 1 being the point guard, 2 being the shooting guard, 3 small forward, 4 power forward, 5 center. Like, you need different body types and guys that do different things. I always appreciated that. Always stood with me from working with Phil Savage a little bit. It's like, hey, let's build a little bit of a basketball roster in our receiver position. So I think it's a little different, but it all starts. I mean, you can't teach speed. Obviously, ball skills is something. It's amazing. People get caught up with speed, but at the end of the day, if you cannot catch the football or go high point, make contested catches, I think that's something that's something it's a non-negotiable. I think the ability, I really got 4. The ability to win off the line of scrimmage, especially as you get off the higher level. In high school, nobody's going to go get press man against a big-time receiver unless you're just dying to get bombs over Baghdad as a defensive coordinator in high school. So they're usually playing 5 to 7 yards off. But when you start playing other guys, like go back and watch the battles between Julio Jones and Patrick Peterson in college back in Alabama. Sure. A bunch of hand combat and just trying to get off the line of scrimmage there. That is key to be elite. And then I think it's what do you do after the catch? Like, do you make plays after the catch and the little nuances of getting open? Like, I thought Devontae Smith, even go back to his high school days, was phenomenal of setting up defensive backs and not knowing where the football is, but he did. Would put his hands up late, put his eyes up late. The little nuances of that is what separates big-time receivers. But I always think about it as building a basketball roster. And I'm not saying I'm right. I just think like different body types that can do different things, I think, to have successful and be an explosive offense in today's game.
I agree with you on 1, speed. You can't teach it. You have it or you don't. If you're really fast, it makes you an elite trait. I mean, you could look at guys who are 6'5". You can look at guys at 5'10", 5'8", 6'3". If they have speed, they have speed. That's just it's a trait that is uncoachable. It is you have it or you don't, and that can make you elite. That could be a difference maker. I look at route running personally. I think I would rather take a dude who is 6 foot and a crisp route runner that knows how to cut properly, be at the right place at the right time when the ball is released. That way I know that he is in stride with his quarterback, than take a dude that can win 50-50 balls but drops half the passes and he rounds off the top of his routes. I am a big route runner guy. I like the cut.
That's where I think the coach can. That's where why you have coach in front of your name. You should be able to coach that up.
But I am somebody that's all about the cuts.
Now we talk. Hold on. This question is this at a high school or at a college? Because that's totally two.
Probably at a college level. Probably at a college level. That's what I'm guessing.
Totally, yeah, it's a different conversation.
But I look at route running. I'd much rather you be 5'10" and on slot only receiver, but you're winning at the line of scrimmage with clean cuts on the slant pattern, and you're getting open, and nobody can touch you. I'd much rather that. And number three, and probably most important for me, is hands. Like, can you just catch a ball? Because of, again, if you have speed, if you can make good cuts, if you can make good, and you're not rounding out the top of your route, you're going direct, good footwork. If you have hands and you don't drop anything, it's positive yards. Like, at the end of the day, I want positive yards. That's what I'm looking for.
Dude, I used to love receivers that played basketball and played baseball in the outfit. That teaches ball skills for receivers there. If you had we had a couple of guys that played center field and baseball, which you could see their ability to track the football, which is key for defensive backs too.
See who we got next. Morgan W. Which player isn't being talked about enough entering spring practice that should have more respect entering week 1 of the regular season? Any position counts.
Put some respect on that guy's name, Bear.
What do you want? Who are you going with?
I got 2.
Okay.
I got a little bit of an honorable mention here. I think one of them's not really sneaky. I think right now he's not being talked about, but it's Barry and Brown. Again, I think he'll be on a lot of preseason lists, but I think a lot of people, when they start getting caught back up with spring practice, they're going to be like, oh, Barry and Brown, he's at LSU. Okay, cool. Had some drop issues at times. But to your point, I think Garrett Nussmeier will be really good for him. He'll also bring special teams value. And an under-the-radar one, I think this is truly under the radar. Talked to my buddy over there, who's kind of higher up at Auburn in the football department. They're not totally sold. It's just going to be Jackson Arnold's job. I mean, they kind of like the Ashton Daniels kid.
Really?
Stanford. Yeah. So, like, again, they're not saying he's going to win the job, but don't be shocked if that kid ends up playing some this year for Auburn. Now, again, if they're going back and forth, it's probably not good for Hugh Freeze. But they did say they have liked what they've seen so far. They really liked the kid a lot. Now, they said they really liked Peyton Thorne, too. Same staff. So let that sink in. But Ashton Daniels is a name they've thrown around that they're like, hey, it's just not Jackson Arnold's job yet. So I'm going to go him as a true under-the-radar guy.
It sucks because if I don't like his wide receiver room outside of one player, but I kind of think it's disrespectful that we're just like throwing Taylor Green out and not giving him any respect whatsoever. Like, the guy last year helped his team get a massive win over Tennessee, put them in a prime position to at least be effective. When he was on point with Bobby Petrino's offense, he was averaging 300 passing yards, 61% completion rating. So what if he takes another step forward? Like what if he's the reason why Arkansas this year and not its defense is getting to 6-7 wins and they're able to turn the corner? Like, I think Taylor Green, and I've made this comparison multiple times, he's Taco Bell at 2 a.m. The question is, are you drunk or sober? If you're drunk, it's really, really good. Like, he is just hitting easy targets. He's going through his progressions, stepping up in the pocket. He's not throwing into triple coverage. When it's bad and you want something else like a Whataburger or a McDonald's or a Jack in the Box, it's bad. It's turnover ridden. It's filled with a bunch of errors. It's fumbles behind line of scrimmage. It's throws that should never be made into triple coverage, whether they're batted down or not. It's rush throws. It's going through his progression too quickly. Like, that's Taylor Green. So if I get better version of Taylor Green and more consistent Taylor Green, I think he's somebody that we got to talk about as maybe a top 10 passer in the SEC. I won't go top 5, but top 10. There's a lot to like about him. And then for another one, I hope that people realize that Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe that now is going to Missouri was not a flash in the pan. What he was doing on a consistent basis in the Sun Belt last year is sustainable. And I think that he is going to have an opportunity behind still a very decent offensive line for Mizzou. Not an elite one, not a great one, but a solid one. He may end up still rushing for 1,000 yards and be in the running for RB1 of the conference. Very well could.
No, I like that one too, Bear. I like that one too. I think those were pretty good right there. Tip of the cap to us there. I thought we had some pretty good ones.
Kyle J. What is your least favorite troop in college football? Like a phrase that's being overused.
Oh, God, mine's ball. From a social media standpoint, it's a total ball knower. I feel like the people who toss around ball knowers, if you're one of them on here, before you go bail on me here, go like and subscribe, hit that subscription button for us. But ball knowers, usually the people saying ball knower or non-ball knower do not know ball. You usually don't have to say. If you're usually a ball knower or a knower of anything, get outside of sports, you usually don't have to tell people about it. So I would say that is my kind of pet peeve. I cannot stand ball knower. Bear already knew that.
Like Nick Saban did. Like anybody saying the next Nick Saban. To me, it's distasteful. Because I understand that we're in a generation that eventually will look back 30 to 40 years from now and say to ourselves, well, when I was growing up, we had Saban, the way that our parents say Bear Bryant or Vince Dooley down in Georgia. But Saban, what he's doing and what he did during a run in the SEC, especially in Alabama when he arrived in 2007, is never going to be duplicated by anybody. It's not going to get done by Sark. It's not going to get done by Kirby. It's not going to get done by Kalen. It's not going to get done by anybody. So I find it distasteful to Saban's legacy to go down as one of the all-time winningest coaches in college football, tie Bear Bryant's record to have the most wins at Alabama in national championships. He has the most SEC national championship wins in all of college football. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. To put pressure on anybody to be the next Nick Saban. Like, let that be a retired phrase because of what Saban accomplished. If you put him in today's college football, Dave, let me ask you, would he have the same success that he had during the 2010 run?
Nick Saban right now?
Yeah, Nick Saban right now.
No, I don't think anybody could because the rules. You can't build the depth and accumulate that with the transfer portal rules now.
So the game has changed so much that it's unfair to any coach and it's unfair to Nick Saban's legacy to put them in the same conversation. And honestly, I don't like doing that with Bear Bryant. I don't like doing that with Vince Dooley. I don't like doing that with Ara Parseghians. I don't like doing that with guys like Wallace Wade way beforehand and Newt Rockne.
You'll probably be doing it with Kirby Smart here soon at Georgia.
Like, just let it be. It's a special coach. Anybody use the phrase like Saban did or like Nick Saban, it's automatically, I don't want to listen to you. It needs to be retired because of what Saban accomplished will never even come close to scratching the surface at any program ever again. Ever. Like, you'll see teams win multiple national championships, but the level of dominance with number one recruiting classes, always getting to 10 plus wins, guaranteeing their spot in the conference championship, and really a first round bid for the college football play. That's never going to happen again in the sport, ever, at any school, regardless of what you have in NIL, regardless of what you have in personnel, regardless of what you have in terms of revenue. It's never going to happen again. So let's stop with the phrase of anything with Nick Saban.
I didn't know that was such a pet peeve to you, Bear.
I cannot stomach when people try to compare anybody to Nick Saban. I thought it was.
Yeah, I guess I'm not that tight. I guess it's just, I mean, it's weird. I mean, it feels like a long time ago and a lot's happened with how fast the world is now, but it's still just, wow, just over a year ago, really. So it wasn't even that long ago. I guess we'll get used to it at some point.
It infuriated me when people were saying we need to go get somebody who did it like Saban when Saban retired down in Alabama. It infuriated me when people said, but Saban would have done this for Kalen DeBoer. Like, it drove me nuts last year as an Alabama grad. And I can't stand when that stuff happens. From who is it? Stan R. Stan R. Simply looking at the schedule, who should make the college football playoff in 2025 among SEC teams?
I'm going, after looking at schedule, I'm going to go 3 teams that I think should make the college football playoff when you're looking at their roster compared to other teams in the league, the upper echelon of the league, and you factor in a very winnable schedule. I'm going to go Tennessee. I think me and you've talked about that on air, off air. Very manageable schedule again. I think Texas is in that conversation. I know they open up with Ohio State, but you go look at the league schedule again, and I'm sure there'll be some teams that are a little better. Like Florida would be better when they play Texas in Gainesville this year, but I still think Texas with a manageable schedule. And then Georgia, again, always going to have the cream of the crop. They don't have the depth that they once had, or that Alabama used to accumulate, like we mentioned with Nick Saban years ago. But I'm going to go those 3 teams that, if I was a fan of them and you look at the schedule, I'd be a little disappointed. So Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia for me.
Those are the same 3, but I'm going to throw a 4th one in just to be like, just because I feel like I have to. I agree with you. Tennessee's schedule is so manageable. In my opinion, they lucked out on having Nico Iamaleava last year play a manageable schedule with a good rushing attack to this year have to take that next step forward and still feel like there's room for improvement where he can look elite and you really have to go under the microscope. That's how much I believe that Tennessee should be back in the college football playoff. Texas, Georgia, same thing. If Missouri's offense can stay stable, like if it can stay stable with Bo Pabula coming on in as the new starting quarterback, Dave, they don't leave Faurot Field until October 18th. They don't leave the state of Missouri until they have to go travel to Auburn. And then after that, they get a home game against Texas A&M. And the only tough road game that they have is in Norman. So I look at Missouri with what they should retain defensively and what they're bringing in offensively. And I'm really high on Kevin Coleman, who came on in Mississippi State. I like what they have in the running back room. I think Pabula working in this offense could do wonders the way that you want a Brady Cook to, especially with the mobility factor. If Tennessee with a manageable schedule last year can get it, if Indiana can get it at 11-1 with a manageable schedule, this is a manageable schedule for a team like Missouri. You just don't have to lose to either South Carolina and or Texas A&M, and then you can lose to Alabama and you're in.
At least Missouri gets the trip back to Columbia against UMass. Thank God the Minutemen are returning that trip. No, I mean, I'm looking at these 3-team schedules too. But I mean, Georgia plays Marshall at a conference, Austin Peay, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia's going to be young as hell on defense. Probably one of the youngest defenses they've had under Kirby. But that schedule, again, the home schedule is nice. Ole Miss and Alabama and Texas all in Athens. And then, like me and you talked about with Tennessee, you open up with Syracuse. Could be interesting. They'll have a really good defense.
It would have if Kyle McCord was back. With Kyle McCord gone, I think it's a little bit rough.
I don't know if they'll lose, but it'll be interesting. I think that line's like 14.5. We were tweeting about it or talking about it the other day. And then you get essentially the same schedule. You got to go to Starkville. You get Arkansas return trip. I mean, you go to Tuscaloosa. That's obviously your toughest game. But you get Georgia week 3. That's something I'm still not. I talked about I'm not to the point of being annoyed with the Nick Saban stuff yet. That's something it hits me every year. I look at the schedule. I'm like, damn, Georgia week 3. To me, that game was – now when I was a kid, that game was early, but then it was so pushed back for a while. I got accustomed to that. And then Texas, I think out of those 3 teams, Bear, has the harder schedule. I mean, you open up at Ohio State, a semifinal rematch. Florida should be better. You get Oklahoma, who should be better. Then you go to Athens, and obviously you get Arkansas and wrap it up with A&M and Texas. But I'm with you. I think those 3 teams.
Richard M. asks, which coordinator in the league will we be talking about at the season's end?
I mean, 2 come to mind here for me, and they're in the same state. I think Ryan Grubb's the low-hanging fruit that you could take, and then I'm going to go DJ Durkin. He got a big push from Ryan Day in Ohio State to go be the DC after Jim Knowles left. I did hear that, so he got the big pay increase, the salary bump at Auburn. I think he kind of – again, they only finished with 5 wins last year, but I mean, it could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for DJ Durkin and that defense. I think they're loading it up. They're getting better on defense. Maybe loaded's a little too heavy of a word. They're improving the personnel on defense. It was young last year. DJ Durkin has always fielded a really good defense wherever he's been at, Florida, Texas A&M. I think he's going to be a guy we could be talking about if Auburn gets back to that 8-9 win range.
I think Clayton White is going to get a lot of love if he can continue to have the defense for South Carolina at that same vicinity. Because if you already have Dylan Stewart, I like the names they've brought in via the portal this offseason. I really like some of the names they brought in. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, Brandon Cisse from NC State. If that defense can get better with the younger players that are returning and they have enough of an impact of the incoming transfers and freshmen to take that same step forward like they had last year, I'm not saying that Clayton White is going to be a name that we talk about for an SEC job, but a Group of 5 job, if there's one available, after what we just saw with Dowell Loggins going to Appalachian State, I don't think it's off the table. I think that South Carolina is going to be a really well-coached team this year. What I'm going to be really interested in is to see, can Clayton White keep the same type of success with a bunch of newcomers coming on in? And then here's one more for you. Joe Sloan. Joe Sloan was rumored to be in the running for the East Carolina job when Mike Houston got fired. And then it just felt like that everyone kind of took a step back on the offensive personnel. What if the offense looks that much more dynamic with another year of him calling the shots? And now we have Nuss competing for a spot in the Heisman Trophy conversation. Berrien Brown's a 1,000-yard receiver. It's a healthy Nick Anderson. The run game is better. And they're actually averaging 36 to 38 points per game. Again, there's this trope that I have just locked in my brain when it comes to LSU quarterbacks. Year 1 with them as the starter, really, really good. Year 2 with them as a starter, elite. Look at what we've seen. Year 1 as a starter with an offensive play caller, with an offensive play caller and Steve Essinger, and then eventually Joe Brady. Joe Burrow jumped all the way up to Heisman Trophy candidate. Mike Denbrock, year 1 to year 2 with Jaden Daniels, jumped on up the Heisman Trophy candidate. What did we see with Joe Sloan and Garrett Nussmeier?
Will be interesting. You're right, Bear. And then the last one we had is from J.D. Gray. He wanted me to say his hometown.
We got 2 more, but yeah, let's do
Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Who is going to win the Alabama starting quarterback job? I'm not bold enough to say Keelan Russell yet from Duncanville. I'm going to stick with Ty to start the season, Ty Simpson to start the season because he's been in the system longer. We'll see. I mean, we could all answer this better after spring. But right now, as of February 27th, at 8:13 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to take I'll take Ty Simpson, but I'll say this. This is as confident as I've been that a true freshman could come start at Alabama since Bryce Young got there. And a lot of people don't know this. If COVID doesn't happen in 2020, I think Bryce Young beats Mac Jones out in that spring for people who were there for a couple of practices before. I think that was the expectation. Obviously, couldn't go with Bryce with the 20 season with all the COVID stuff. But I think that this is the most confident I've been since Bryce Young had stepped foot. So I'm about a 4 out of 10 confidence level that we actually see Keelan Russell this year in some meaningful games and some meaningful situations. So I'm almost a coin flip there. I'm 4 out of 10. So I do expect us to see him. I would be willing to bet on it, but I think Ty starts the year. I'm not that bold to go into spring without seeing either one of them predicting a true freshman to go in and win that job right now.
So what I thought was really funny is that now we're finally seeing the Austin Mack truthers kind of come out of the woodwork with Ryan Grubb coming on back in. They recruited him to Seattle. He already knows the offense. Then he goes to Alabama. He sits for a year. Grubb comes back in. He's already got a good relationship with Grubb. The bottom line for me, I think Ty Simpson is still the favorite to win the job. I think he's going to win week 1, the job. But then again, remember when Jalen Hurts came to campus? And this is always the thing that I love about it. Blake Barnett was supposed to be the starting quarterback. Everyone believed Blake Barnett was going to win the starting job. Everyone thought that Blake Barnett was going to be the guy. Blake Barnett going into the USC game is the guy. And then Jalen Hurts just wows you enough, has a very bad first drive, comes back in, gets the job. 3 weeks later, we see Blake Barnett transfer to Arizona State. Maybe that's Austin Mack, but I do feel like here's the best part. Dave, the quarterback position at this point, it's meant for 2026 in Keelan Russell. If he has to start this year, that's awesome. Like if he ends up coming on in and balling on out, that's great. It's great for Alabama. They got their guy long-term. But if this is like a Jake Coker, Blake Sims type of feel where, hey, we're going to go with Austin Mack, we're going to go with Ty Simpson. They do enough. They get to 10 wins. They get you to a college football playoff appearance. You're not complaining. Like I look at this as kind of a blessing in disguise. I think all 3 could win the starting job. I think Ty Simpson has the front edge, having a good relationship with Kalen DeBoer, just like Austin Mack does. But Keelan Russell, to me, if he ends up starting, it's great. If he ends up sitting for a year, even better. That means that I feel like the transition for the quarterback position is so well equipped and so well put together underneath the 2 guys you have currently in front of you with Austin Mack and Ty Simpson.
Yeah, I'd be a little surprised a little more from Austin Mack won it. But yeah, I'm with you. Got to go with Ty Simpson right now for what we know.
And last one, JK, outside of the Iron Bowl and Red River Shootout, I know both of you are going to say that answer. What's one rivalry the SEC must save if they were to get rid of all future rivalries in a brand new 9-team format style?
They already took one away from me. That I'll forever be mad about, that we'll never get, that I'm used to getting. LSU Auburn, we got that one out of our system. Still bothered by that one. We hadn't seen that one. For the other maybe 2 to 3, it could be potentially Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I would hate to have that. I don't think that would ever happen. That would never happen, though. But if you're just saying, hey, all things are on the table here, we're cutting anything, that would be one. I think it's a very under-the-radar rivalry in football and baseball, certainly. Basketball teams are good now, but that's not really where the core of that rivalry is. But I think it's underrated. Southeast, if you're from the Southeast, you know about it. And then I think as the league expands, we may at some point stop the every year game of Alabama, Tennessee, or Georgia, Tennessee. That wouldn't shock me at some point. Like that, like us stopping that, not forever, but us not playing those year to year. But I would say just a true rivalry, if you just maybe take it off the table, it would probably be either Alabama, Tennessee, or Ole Miss, Mississippi State.
I'm from the state of Texas. I just got it back. I have an allegiance to it. I want Texas and Texas A&M to play against each other every year. I do. There's something about the Lone Star Showdown. There's something about my childhood. There's something about a comfort of it being on Thanksgiving, watching College Station and Austin come together with pure hatred. One side maroon and white, one side burnt orange and white, just having that feel. And you felt it last year. For a lot of fans, my biggest fear was that there were going to be so many kids that don't understand what this game meant to the older generation, that they weren't going to appreciate it because of how many times I heard people say LSU was Texas A&M's biggest rival. It's a good game. It's nowhere near what you got to see in the Lone Star Showdown. So I just got it back. I don't want it taken away from me again for the next decade plus. Like I want it to stick around. That's something that I just have pride in as a Texan. That's something that just brings me joy. And I love the third Saturday in October. Dave, I love the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I love the Deep South's oldest rivalry. But that, to me, is the game that I have waited for 13 years to finally be back. I'm not letting it go just because of you want to add a ninth conference game and get rid of rivalries because of you got to make sure that you have all these switch ups. Sorry, that's just one off the table. Not excusable for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
All right, hypothetical question of the day. We'll get on out of here with this. The college football playoff era is over. Instead, we're going to the NFC and AFC. It's the Big Ten and the SEC. Super League's coming. Here's the rule. The SEC has got to expand to 24 teams. Dave and I are doing a snake draft. My teams versus Dave's teams on how we build the SEC moving forward. There are 2 rules to this, Dave. Rule number 1, you can't take a team from the Big Ten. So Nebraska's off the table. Maryland's off the table. If you want to go with any of them, you can't take them. Rule number 2, all 16 teams that currently are in the SEC are staying in the SEC. So you can't take out like a Mississippi State. You can't take out like a Vanderbilt or a Missouri and then say, sorry, I'm going to add now 2 teams from the state of North Carolina. So that's the rules. So you have 16. You got to get 24. Do you want the first pick or do you want the snake pick?
Oh, no, I don't. So what's the rules here, Bear? I'm a little.
You don't get to take a team from the you don't get to take a team from the Big Ten, and you don't get to remove a team from the SEC.
So who am I drafting? Just the SEC teams?
You can draft any team in anywhere else in college football. So the
ACC, I got you. How many draft picks do I get?
You have 8. Do you want to go first, or do you want to go back?
You can go first. So anywhere from the Big 12 or ACC, essentially.
Basically, yeah. All right. I'm just going to knock this out. I want to continue what we already have seen in the state of Florida. Florida State's been trying to get on over. I think that Florida State comes with a ton of revenue. I think that Florida State would be able to meet the certain standards. I think that there would be expectations for Florida State to already join the SEC. There's been rumors about them wanting to come on in. Just throw them on into the SEC immediately right now.
Give me Notre Dame, Bear.
Really? You're going to make them join a conference.
Get us in, baby. First time they're joining the conference. They're joining the Thompson Tech Conference.
All right, so you get back-to-back picks.
So I'm going to go next. Let's make the Palmetto State a conference game. Let's go Clemson.
Kind of figured you're going to take Clemson. Okay. Give me one of the richest teams in college football. I think that now they're at the Power 4 level. What they can provide in terms of the revenue, how big their market is, and also just how much I think that Rhett Lashley is going to change the culture there. Give me SMU. I think SMU now in the ACC with how much money.
Biased.
What?
I was kidding. I said, is that Lone Star
biased? No, but dude, it's Texas. Like, do you understand how much money? Like, people make fun of A&M all the time for how much money they have. How much money SMU has in its oil rigs out in Dallas, in University Park. They can build a team overnight, and they can be able to afford a chance to go to the college football playoff every single year. Like, I'm very high on them being a team that's going to make a run in the ACC moving forward. And I think Rhett Lashley could take over the ACC when Dabo retires. So I got SMU in mind, and I'm not going to call it at the Peach State. Give me Georgia Tech. I think that getting that rivalry between Georgia and Georgia Tech, they were in the SEC at one point. I get the market of Atlanta. I think that's a win for myself too.
I'm going to go take the North Carolina Tar Heels, Bear. Let me get that breath. I think I got some pretty good brands here. They're adding up to me. Notre Dame, Clemson, North Carolina. And on top of that, I'm going to go add. We're going to go dip and add a third team from the Big 12 from the state of Texas. Bear. We're going to go the TCU Horned Frogs.
I knew you were going to do that too. I knew you were too. I want to take that one. I wanted to wait long enough. I didn't think I was going to. Okay. Give me Louisville. Let's just go ahead and close out.
Give him the bill. That's not a bad one, Bear. Maybe
Papa John. They're going to be better in football. I get Jeff Brom in. I get Bourbon. I get to have Papa John's Arena or whatever it's called at this point. Louisville Sluggers in that same vicinity.
The KFC Yum Center.
KFC Yum Center. That's it. So I'll get Louisville. I'll throw them in mine. Man, now it's getting tough. Oh, Miami. I haven't gotten them yet. Oh, let's throw Miami into the mix. So I get Miami and Florida State. That rivalry continues. Now it's a triangle of Florida State, and Miami. They all get to play against each other. I'll make them a three-game must-have every single year. So Miami and Louisville, they join the party for me.
Oh, man. For me, I'm going to go the Virginia Tech Hokies.
Damn it.
I'm going to add the Hokies here. I think that's the next best brand out of these group of teams coming in. And you know what? Man, where do we want to go next? a more regional base. So we're not gonna go down
You're
there.
not gonna go way out west to go get Utah or something like that.
No, you know what? We're gonna add another. We're gonna go bring in the Oklahoma State Cowboys. We're gonna get Oklahoma. We're gonna get Bedlam back, maybe, as a conference game.
Okay. You took North Carolina, right?
I did.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna take Duke then. Just give me Duke. That'll be good for basketball.
Get those academic standards up.
The standards goes up for me there.
You have a rival.
Andy and them get to play against each other every single year in football. Who's the smartest school in the country? Do I want to go take them? I don't want to, because I don't know. There's just something that says if I do, I'm gonna work. Fuck it, just do it. Give me Virginia. That way I own the entire Southeastern region. I get my roots in Virginia. I get to have a team in Virginia at this point. So Charlottesville, the Cavaliers, they come on in.
All right, I'm going to take the NC State Wolfpack, give them a running low, and then I'm going to add a young, energetic fan base. Average age, probably about 36 years old now. School started in the 1960s. We're going to go the UCF Knights. I think we're going to
Damn it.
Because I keep going back as we get older. That's a younger fan base. It's only going to keep making more money for our league, bigger brand in the city of Orlando. Give me the Knights.
Okay, where can I even go at this point?
Where
can I go? I mean, I could stay in Texas.
The ACC is pretty depleted. Pitt, Cal. Pitt's going to be operating off a $12 million revenue.
I know where I'm going.
Our athletics department.
I know I'm going. I'm going here because you want to know why? That fan base is psycho enough to join the SEC. That fan base is ravenous enough, and I think that because of who they just hired as their head football coach, you're going to watch as the NIL comes in droves.
You going the Red Raiders?
No. Give me Pat McAfee School.
West Virginia?
Give me West Virginia. I am adding
Rod and the boys. Pat White and the boys. Get them back.
They're coming back. Rich Rod is going to bring back prominence
to the 05 Sugar Bowl. West Virginia.
They're coming with me.
Bulldogs.
They're in the SEC. They're going to dominate. Rich Rod, Pat McAfee. I get the fan base. I get the culture. I get the identity of Morgantown. I call that a win. Okay, so my 8 teams: Florida State, SMU, Georgia Tech, Miami, Louisville, Duke, Virginia, West Virginia. Who do you got?
I got Notre Dame, Clemson, North Carolina, TCU, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, NC State, UCF. My teams, my new conference, we're going to be wiping our ass with $100 bills. These brands are so freaking big. I'm going to bathe in $100 bills when we get off this thing. Thank you, TCU. Thank you, Notre Dame.
You do realize that you're in Fort Worth and you're not actually in Dallas. I'm actually in Dallas. I'm in University Park when it comes to that city.
We'll take it out. We'll take it out in the skillet.
We're gonna okay, well, cool. We get the Iron Skillet Bowl now as part of the SEC. That's a good rivalry. I like that. Go ahead and comment down below. Who do you think wins this? Me or Dave? Who do you think ends up getting better when it comes to our future SEC? But
question.
That does it for us here on the Overtime Drive. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. Real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel. It takes literally 10 seconds, and it's free. We're not really asking you guys to go ahead and pay a price. What we're doing is we just want to know what you guys like, what you guys think is enjoyable content, and what we can do to improve the show moving forward. We will be back on Monday. That's a content day, so we are wrapped up, filled to the brim with ideas coming your way. Make sure that also you're following us on all the social channels. That way you keep up with all the action at SEC Unfiltered, at Dave Shumate SEC, and at Mr. Cole Thompson. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. For all of us here at SEC Unfiltered, have a good night, have a good weekend. And remember, you only live once. Try and enjoy it. Peace.